Victoria was running late to what was supposed to be the most important meeting of her life when she was pulled over by a black police officer, and in that single moment, everything she had worked for hung in the balance. One speeding ticket could have ended her career, destroyed a $1 billion deal, and cost hundreds of people their jobs. And just when she had already lost all hope, she could never have expected what the black cop did next. What began as a desperate race against time became a turning point that slowed her down just enough to change her life forever. Victoria Hayes had exactly 45 minutes before her entire world came crashing down. She didn't know it yet, standing in the pristine locker room of Elite Fitness on the Upper East Side, toweling sweat from her face after an intense morning workout. At 28, she was the youngest CEO of a major tech firm in California, and the only hour she carved out for herself each day was this, 6:30 to 7:30 a.m., before the chaos consumed her. Her phone buzzed on the bench. Then again, and again. Victoria glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. 12 missed calls from James, her assistant. 15 texts. The preview of the last one made her blood run cold. Emergency. Mitchell Corp moved meeting to 9 a.m. They're walking if you're not there. Victoria's hands trembled as she opened the full message thread. Her worst nightmare was unfolding in real time. Mitchell Corporation, the massive conglomerate that had been negotiating a $50 million merger with her company for 18 months, had suddenly moved up their final decision meeting. No warning, no courtesy call, just an ultimatum. And their CEO, Robert Mitchell, had made it clear in previous meetings what he thought about doing business with a young woman. He had called her ambitious. He had questioned her experience. He had suggested she might be in over her head. This was a test. And if she failed to show up, punctual and prepared, he would use it as proof that she wasn't serious enough, wasn't professional enough, wasn't enough. Victoria looked at her reflection in the mirror. Black athletic wear, hair still damp from exertion, no makeup, sneakers. She calculated rapidly. 45 minutes to get home, shower, change into her power suit, do her makeup, and drive downtown to her office building. That would make her at least 30 minutes late. Mitchell would walk. The deal would die. Her 200 employees would be at risk. Everything she'd built would crumble. 25 minutes, straight to the office, on her motorcycle. Change in her private bathroom, touch up in her compact mirror, make the meeting with minutes to spare. It wasn't even a choice. Victoria grabbed her helmet and keys and ran. The morning air whipped past her as she tore out of the parking garage, her sport bike growling beneath her. The city was just waking up, traffic still light on the outskirts. She merged onto the highway and twisted the throttle. 60 miles per hour, 70, 80. The speedometer climbed as her desperation grew. Every second counted. Every minute was the difference between success and failure. She thought about her father as she rode. Daniel Hayes, who had built a successful manufacturing company from nothing, only to lose it all to a corrupt business partner. When Victoria was 23, she remembered watching him age 10 years and 6 months. The stress carving lines into his face, the shame bowing his shoulders, and then the heart attack that took him, sudden and brutal, in his home office, surrounded by bankruptcy papers. At his funeral, Victoria had made a promise. She would rebuild. She would succeed where he had failed. She would prove that the Hayes name meant something. Hayes Digital Solutions was that promise kept. 5 years of sleeping 4 hours a night. 5 years of missing birthdays and holidays, and any semblance of a personal life. 5 years of clawing her way through a male-dominated industry that questioned her every move. And now, finally, she was on the verge of the merger that would legitimize everything, that would make her company a major player, that would let her father rest in peace. She couldn't be late. She wouldn't be late. The speedometer hit 92. Victoria didn't see the patrol car until its lights exploded in her mirrors, red and blue strobing against the dawn. Her heart sank, even as her hands instinctively pulled the bike to the shoulder. No, 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 not now, not today. The officer approached slowly, and Victoria's mind raced through her options. Apologize profusely, explain the situation, beg if necessary. She checked her watch. 38 minutes until the meeting. If this took more than 10 minutes, she was finished. Officer Marcus Thompson had been on the highway patrol for 8 years, and he had seen every kind of reckless driving imaginable. But clocking a motorcycle at 92 miles per hour on a Thursday morning, weaving through traffic like it was a video game, that was a special kind of dangerous. Someone was going to get killed, and it was his job to prevent it. He noted the expensive bike, the premium gear, probably some thrill-seeker with more money than sense. He approached with his hand near his belt, professional and alert. The rider pulled off her helmet, and Marcus found himself looking at a young woman with blonde hair plastered to her forehead, still wearing gym clothes, and on the verge of tears. "License and registration, please," he said, his voice firm, but not unkind. Victoria fumbled with her wallet, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. "Officer, I know I was speeding. I know there's no excuse. But please, I have an emergency. My entire company depends on me being downtown in 35 minutes. Please." Marcus had heard every excuse in the book: family emergencies, medical crises, urgent business. Most of them were exaggerations or outright lies. But something in this woman's voice gave him pause. This wasn't entitled anger or dismissive arrogance. This was genuine desperation. "Ma'am, whatever you're rushing to isn't worth your life or someone else's. Do you understand you were doing 92 in a 55 zone?" Victoria felt the tears spill over, and she hated herself for it. She never cried. Not in board meetings, when men twice her age talked over her. Not when investors questioned her projections. Not even at her father's funeral, because she had been too numb with shock. But here, on the side of the highway, with everything falling apart, her armor finally cracked. "I can't fail," she whispered. "Not today. Please, I can't." Marcus watched her carefully. He had been a cop long enough to read people, and what he saw wasn't manipulation. It was a human being at the end of her rope. He made a decision that went against his training, against protocol, against everything that had kept him safe and professional for 8 years. "What kind of emergency?" he asked quietly. Victoria showed him her phone with trembling hands, the frantic messages from James, the news articles about the potential merger that had been in the business section for weeks, her company ID showing her title, CEO, Hayes Digital Solutions. Marcus studied the evidence, then looked at her face. He thought about his own younger brother, and the split-second decisions that changed lives forever. He thought about the kind of officer he had promised himself he would be, after everything he had seen and lost. "Which building downtown?" he asked. Victoria told him, not understanding. "I'm going to do something I have never done before," Marcus said. "I'm going to escort you there, legally and safely. But when this is over, you come to the station. We discuss your reckless driving. Deal?" Victoria stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. Why are you being so kind to me?" Marcus met her eyes steadily. "Because I believe in second chances, and because people are counting on you. Don't make me regret this. Now put your helmet on and follow me. We're doing this by the book, just faster." Victoria made it to the meeting with 2 minutes to spare. The merger went through. Mitchell signed the papers, though he made a pointed comment about cutting it close. Victoria smiled professionally and shook his hand, but inside, she was still trembling from the morning's chaos. The next day, she kept her promise. She drove to the police station, this time in her car, wearing her best Navy power suit and heels. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She looked every inch the successful CEO, but her stomach was in knots. She asked for Officer Thompson at the front desk, and when Marcus walked out to meet her, there was a moment where they both just stared. Out of her gym clothes and helmet, Victoria looked completely different. Polished, powerful, professional, and she'd kept her word, which surprised him more than he wanted to admit. "Miss Hayes," Marcus said, gesturing toward a private office. "Let's talk." They sat across from each other at a plain metal desk. Marcus pulled out his notepad and looked at her seriously. "You were doing 92 in a 55 zone. You could have killed someone. You could have killed yourself. I need to know this won't happen again." Victoria took a deep breath. She had prepared a simple apology, a promise to be more careful. But sitting there, looking at the man who had saved her entire career yesterday, the words that came out were completely different. "My father owned a company," she began quietly. "When I was 23, his business partner stole everything. Drained the accounts, sold assets under the table, disappeared. My father spent 6 months trying to fix it, trying to save what he had built. The stress? It killed him. Heart attack at 52 years old. Marcus listened without interrupting. I started Hayes Digital in my apartment with borrowed money. Victoria continued. I worked 100 hours a week. I gave up everything. Friends, relationships, sleep, anything that wasn't building the company. Because I had to prove that I could succeed where he failed. I had to prove the Hayes name still meant something. She looked down at her hands. That meeting yesterday wasn't just business. It was me proving to my dead father that I could finish what he started. It was stupid to risk everything by speeding. I know that. But in that moment, failing felt worse than dying. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Marcus spoke, his voice softer than before. When I was 19, my younger brother was killed in a shooting. Wrong place, wrong time. He wasn't in a gang, he was just walking home from basketball practice. 16 years old. Victoria looked up, meeting his eyes. I became a cop because I wanted to be different, Marcus said. I wanted to be the kind of officer who sees people, really sees them, not just problems to solve, or boxes to check. Who gives people a chance when they deserve it? My brother never got a second chance. But I can give them to others. We're both trying to honor people we lost, Victoria said softly. Marcus nodded. Then he slid a paper across the desk. It was a ticket, but when Victoria looked at the fine, it was minimal. Just a minor violation with traffic school, not the thousands of dollars and points on her license she deserved. This is your second chance, Marcus said. Use it wisely. Victoria stood to leave, then hesitated at the door. Thank you, Officer Thompson, for yesterday and for today, for seeing me as a person and not just another problem. Over the next week, Victoria couldn't stop thinking about that conversation. About Marcus's calm presence, his quiet strength, the way he had shared his pain without asking for sympathy. She found herself distracted in meetings, wondering about him. She did some research. Discovered he volunteered at community centers, coached youth basketball, put himself through college while working as a cop. Everything she learned made her more curious. So she showed up at the Riverside Community Center on a Tuesday evening, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, carrying information about corporate sponsorship programs. Marcus was running basketball drills with a group of teenagers when he spotted her in the doorway. His surprise was obvious. Miss Hayes, he said, walking over while the kids took a water break. This is unexpected. Victoria smiled nervously. Call me Tori. And I wanted to talk about your youth program. My company has a community outreach budget, and I thought maybe we could help. It was a flimsy excuse, and they both knew it. But Marcus invited her to his office after practice anyway, and they talked for 3 hours about the kids he worked with, about her company's growth, about dreams and fears, and everything in between. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, like they had known each other for years instead of days. Coffee the next morning turned into dinner that weekend. Dinner turned into a walk through the park. The walk turned into late-night phone calls that stretched past midnight. Victoria discovered a world outside her office, outside the constant pressure to perform and succeed. Marcus discovered someone who challenged him, who asked hard questions, and wasn't afraid of real answers. He took her to a community barbecue, where she met families who had never heard of her company, but welcomed her with open arms. She took him to a tech industry gala, where he stood beside her in a rented tux, while men in expensive suits made subtle, cutting remarks that she shut down instantly. You don't have to defend me, Marcus said quietly, as they left early. Yes, I do, Tori replied firmly, because you'd do the same for me. 3 weeks after they met, they found themselves back at the scenic overlook where he had pulled her over. It was sunset, the sky painted in oranges and purples. They sat on the hood of his car, shoulders touching. I haven't let anyone close in 6 years, Tori admitted. I told myself I didn't have time, that relationships were distractions I couldn't afford. But you're not a distraction, Marcus. You're the first time I've felt like myself since my father died. Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching the sun sink lower. When I pulled you over that morning, I saw someone running so fast, she couldn't see where she was going. I recognized it because I've been the same way. After my brother died, I buried myself in work too. Told myself if I just helped enough people, saved enough lives, it would balance out the one I couldn't save. They sat in comfortable silence, both understanding what the other had left unsaid. But then Marcus pulled back slightly. Tori, you're a CEO. You run a multi-million-dollar company. I'm a highway patrol officer. I live in a one-bedroom apartment. I drive a 10-year-old car. I've seen what happens when people from different worlds try to make it work. Tori turned to face him. You think I care about money? Marcus, I grew up with money. It didn't save my father. It didn't make my mother happy. It doesn't mean anything without someone to share it with. My ex-girlfriend left because I couldn't give her the lifestyle she wanted, Marcus said quietly. Country club memberships, expensive vacations, designer everything. I'm never going to be that guy. Good, because I'm not looking for that guy, Tori said. I'm looking for someone real, someone who sees me, not my bank account or my job title, someone who pulls me over when I'm going too fast, literally and figuratively. But Marcus couldn't quite believe it. The gap between their worlds felt too wide, too impossible to bridge. They agreed to slow down, to think things through. The agreement felt safe, logical, mature. It also felt like the beginning of the end. 2 weeks later, Marcus was sitting at a red light during his lunch break when he saw a news broadcast on a storefront TV, Forbes Top 30 Under 30. The banner read, and there was Tori's face, smiling in a professional headshot, surrounded by other young CEOs and entrepreneurs. The segment showed clips of her office, her penthouse apartment, her life. Marcus drove back to the station feeling like he had swallowed rocks. He had been fooling himself. She belonged in that world of wealth and success. He was just a cop who had been in the right place at the right time. Whatever he had thought was building between them, it couldn't survive reality. 3 weeks after the Forbes article came out, everything fell apart. A rival company launched a hostile takeover attempt against Hayes Digital. The news broke on a Monday morning, and by Monday afternoon, Tori's entire world was on fire. She canceled her dinner plans with Marcus. Then she canceled coffee the next day. Then she stopped answering his calls altogether. She was back to sleeping 4 hours a night, living in her office, eating takeout at her desk at 2 in the morning. Every waking moment was spent fighting to save her company, calling investors, meeting with lawyers, working the numbers over and over until her eyes burned. Marcus tried to reach out. He texted, he called. He even stopped by her office building once, but her assistant told him she was in meetings all day. The message was clear. Whatever they had started, it was over. On the 4th attempt to talk to her, Tori finally answered her phone. Her voice was exhausted, empty. Marcus, I can't do this right now. My company is dying. I don't have space for anything else. Let me help, Marcus said. Even if it's just bringing you dinner or making sure you sleep. You can't help with this. Tori snapped, the stress making her sharp. You were right, okay? Our worlds don't match. I can't be the person you need. I can't be anything except what I am, which is someone who has to work every second of every day just to survive. The line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone for a long time after. He had known it would end like this. He had known from the start that the gap between them was too wide. It still hurt more than he had expected. 4 weeks into the crisis, Tori won. She fought off the takeover through a combination of brilliant strategy, late-night negotiations, and sheer stubborn refusal to surrender. Her board congratulated her. Her employees cheered. The business press called her a rising star who had proven her strength under fire. And then, alone in her office at 11 p.m. on a Friday night, Tori collapsed. Her assistant James found her on the floor 30 minutes later when he came back for his forgotten keys. He called an ambulance immediately, his hands shaking as he tried to wake her up. At the hospital, the doctor was blunt. Miss Hayes, your body is shutting down. Dehydration, exhaustion, dangerously high blood pressure. You're running on empty. If you don't change something, you're heading for a heart attack. Just like your father. Those last words hit like a punch to the chest. Tori lay in the hospital bed, hooked up to an IV, staring at the ceiling, just like your father. She had been so focused on not failing the way he had, on proving she could succeed where he couldn't, that she had missed the obvious truth. She was failing in the exact same way, working herself to death, sacrificing everything that mattered for success that meant nothing without someone to share it with. She thought about Marcus, about his smile, about the way he listened like her words actually mattered, about how safe she felt sitting next to him on that overlook, watching the sunset, about how she had thrown it all away because she was too scared, too stubborn, too broken to let herself be happy. The next evening, Tori checked herself out of the hospital against doctor's orders. She was still weak, still dizzy, but she knew if she didn't do this now, she never would. She drove to the Riverside Community Center, and arrived just as basketball practice was ending. The kids were heading out, high-fiving Marcus as they left. He was laughing at something one of them said, and Tori's heart ached watching him. This was where he belonged. With people he helped, people he cared about, people who needed him. Marcus saw her standing in the doorway and froze. She looked terrible, pale and thin, with dark circles under her eyes. But she was there, and that was something. The last few kids filed out, throwing curious looks between Marcus and Tori. When they were alone, Tori walked to the center of the basketball court. Her legs felt shaky, but she forced herself to stand straight. "You pulled me over for speeding," she began, her voice echoing slightly in the empty gym. "But I've been speeding through life for 6 years, racing past friendships, relationships, joy, anything that might slow me down or make me feel something real." Marcus didn't move, just watched her carefully. "That morning, you asked me what emergency was worth risking my life for. I said my company. But I was wrong. You know what's actually worth the risk? Love, connection, actually living instead of just surviving. I ended up in the hospital 2 days ago," Tori continued. "Collapsed in my office from exhaustion. And the doctor told me I was heading for a heart attack just like my father. I had been so scared of failing like him that I couldn't see I was dying like him." She took a shaky breath. "I'm not asking you to fit into my world, Marcus. I'm asking if you'll help me build a new one. One where success isn't measured in deals or dollars, but in moments that actually matter. I'm terrified. I'm probably going to mess this up. But I'd rather fail at this with you than succeed at everything without you." Marcus crossed the court slowly, until he stood right in front of her. "Tori, what about your company? Your 80-hour weeks? Your employees depending on you?" "I hired a chief operating officer this morning," Tori said. "Someone I trust to share the load. I'm learning to delegate, to ask for help, to admit I can't do everything alone. You taught me that. You taught me that asking for help isn't weakness." "And what about us, being from different worlds?" Marcus asked quietly. "We're from the same world," Tori said firmly. "We're both from the world of people who've lost someone and spent years trying to make it mean something. We're both from the world of working too hard and caring too much and being too scared to let anyone in. Those worlds match perfectly." Marcus studied her face for a long moment. He saw the exhaustion, yes, but also something new. Hope, honesty, the willingness to be completely open even when it was terrifying. "That morning I pulled you over, I gave you a second chance," Marcus said slowly. "Maybe it's time I gave myself one too. I've been so scared of not being enough that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. Someone brave enough to show up. Someone real enough to admit when she's wrong. Someone worth the risk." He reached out and took her hand. "So yes, let's build something new. Together." Tori felt tears streaming down her face, but for the first time in years, they were happy tears. Marcus pulled her into a hug, and she buried her face in his shoulder, feeling like she could finally breathe again. They stood like that for a long time in the empty gym, two people who had spent years running, finally standing still. 8 months later, they returned to the scenic overlook where everything had started. Tori was on her motorcycle again, but this time Marcus was riding behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist. They took their time, enjoying the journey, stopping to watch a hawk circle overhead. At the overlook, they sat on the bench someone had installed since that first morning. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors. Tori leaned against Marcus, completely content. "You know," Marcus said casually, "I technically never closed your case file from that day." Tori laughed. "Are you seriously bringing up paperwork right now?" "Well, there is one way to close it permanently," Marcus said. He shifted to face her, pulling a small box from his jacket pocket. Her eyes went wide. "Victoria Hayes, will you slow down long enough to marry me?" Tori was crying and laughing at the same time. "Only if you promise to keep pulling me over when I'm going too fast." "Deal," Marcus said, slipping the ring onto her finger. They kissed as the sun sank below the horizon, painting everything in golden light. Two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way, at the most unexpected time, proving that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best ones. 6 months after that, they stood in the same hospital where Tori had nearly lost everything. But this time, her mother was there, healthy and smiling, holding a phone to capture the moment. Marcus was on one knee again, this time in front of all their friends and family. asking the question he had asked once before but wanted to ask again, properly, surrounded by everyone they loved. And Tori said yes again, because saying yes to Marcus had been the best decision she'd ever made. Sometimes, she would think later, the best things in life happen when you're forced to stop running. That morning, she had thought Marcus was delaying her success, costing her everything she had worked for. She had been racing toward a meeting that felt like life or death, but really, he had been redirecting her toward something better, a life worth living, a love worth having, a future worth building, not in spite of slowing down, but because of it. The speeding ticket she never got became the best thing that never happened to her. And the officer who had shown her mercy became the person who taught her what mercy really meant. Not just forgiveness for a mistake, but grace for a whole life lived too fast, and the patience to build something real, something lasting, something worth more than any business deal or success story. Together, they learned that the destination matters less than who you're traveling with, and that sometimes the person who stops you is actually the person who saves you.